All right, hey people. Today is March 12th, 2022. My name is Chris Lucas. I'm just doing a quick show. I'm going to do a longer show in about 20 minutes about Ukraine and everything, but I just want to do this one real quick. And hello to everyone out there watching. Yeah, let me just play this clip of Alex Jones.
Why is President Trump coming out?
Oops, shoot, I forgot to do the screen share. Alright, let me go back.
Why is President Trump coming out and saying he's going to have this really clean, safe vaccine ready in just a few months? Well, it's because Bill Gates has these really dangerous new vaccines that go in and reprogram the cells that are experimental, and that 80% of people that take them are getting sick. And so Bill Gates has bought off much of the CDC and the NIH. So Trump is taking control of the process, saying, don't worry, we'll have another vaccine for you that's actually much, much weaker and doesn't cause as many problems. I still think it's very, very dangerous what President Trump is doing. Vaccines are a real technology. The problem is they've been given liability protection. They've been caught adding things to them, especially the UN and Bill Gates. Bill Gates just got caught giving people all over the world polio. The Associated Press
trying to release this vaccine out. So which one is that safe vaccine, Alex? Well, hey, I found this tweet because Alex Jones said this back in 2020, right? It's before the vaccine was ever released, or the so-called vaccine was released. But anyway, Ivanka Trump says, fact check. This Moderna NIH vaccine is literally the one that President at Real Donald Trump partnered with Moderna to create on January 13th, 2020. I repeat, January 13th, 2020. Just be happy. This is great news for America and the world. So, okay, Alex. She said this was from that Donald Trump's been working with Moderna since January 13th, 2020. Okay, the genetic sequence for this injection, I should have had this already pulled up. I forgot about this part of it. But let's go look at this vaccine timeline on Moderna's page. Gotta make sure we get all the way to the bottom. Let's go look at this, because this is going to be really interesting. Okay, so look, the Chinese authorities shared the genetic sequence of the novel coronavirus on January 11th. So they didn't really have the virus in their possession. They just had it from China, right? So they send it over to the NIH on January, and so on January, so it's sent over to the NIH on January 11th, 2020. So the NIH and Moderna finalize the sequence for mRNA 1273. That is what the coronavirus vaccine is called, mRNA 1273. That's what you're getting injected into your body. So their first batch they come up with, it's like they got it right their very first time. Even though this company never brought anything to market before, they got it right their first time. Like, they didn't make several batches, to my understanding. It's like, oh, hey, this is the batch. This is the one we're going to go with. And if they did have other batches, I'd like to see all the proof of it, where you tested several batches and then you were like, oh, no, this is the one. I like to see all that proof. But to my knowledge, it really looks like they came up with one formula. It worked, and then they immediately started to mobilize towards clinical manufacture. Now, this is before any kind of pandemics declared. This is like 2 months, almost 2 months exactly before a pandemic's declared. And they just, so then they take and they go start making it. So just 2 days after they get the sequence, they start making a batch, which takes about 25 days to make. As you can see over here, it's 25 days to make it. First clinical batch of mRNA 1273 was completed a total of 25 days from sequence selection to vaccine manufacture. So they were already starting to manufacture it. The batch then proceeded to an analytical testing for release. Now you got to think they didn't have several batches. They got it right their very first time because they didn't have a bunch of people, like, oh, this test group of people, it didn't test well. This test group, it didn't test well. But this other test group, like this 20th test group over here of people, it tested well. No, according to me, to everything I've read, they've only had one batch of people they tested it on, and they just happened to be like, yep, we still got it right. I mean, that doesn't strike you as suspicious. Because as you can see here from when they first made about 17 days later, the first batch is sent to the NIH for their phase 1 clinical study. That's where you use people. So 17 days after it was even created, they're just putting it into people. So I'm not going to go too long on that. But now I found this other article. Well, you know what? Let me play this clip for you.
You wouldn't have a vaccine if it weren't for me for another 4 years, because FDA would have never been able to do what they did, what I forced them to do.
Whoa. What was that you said? Forced them?
You wouldn't have a vaccine if it weren't for me for another 4 years, because FDA would have never been able to do what they did, what I forced them to do. And Pfizer and others even decided to not assess the results of their vaccine. In other words, not come out with a vaccine until just after the election.
Just kind of thought that was interesting. And then I'll just kind of bring this up. Bill Gates and Donald Trump have flu vaccine meeting in Oval Office. So that says this article is 4 years ago. And it's off this website called Prep for That. So 4 years ago, this guy named Jim Satney wrote this article about Bill Gates and Donald Trump have a flu vaccine meeting in the Oval Office. Bill Gates claims that President Donald Trump, the most outspoken vaccine safety president in history, is suddenly on board with a universal flu vaccine. Gates, one of the world's largest vaccine philanthropists, says he discussed the premise of the universal flu shot with Donald Trump last month in the Oval Office. Gates described the premise of a universal flu vaccine as American innovation. Gates conveyed to Trump that pushing a universal flu vaccine would essentially be added to the president's legacy. You should associate yourself with American innovation. Wouldn't you love to have the universal flu vaccine be something that really got kicked off and energized by you? Gates said during the Oval Office meeting. Gates claims that President Donald Trump is super interested in the concept of such a robust undertaking. He says that Trump was so excited by the idea that he summoned FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb into the conversation via phone. According to Gates, the president asked Gottlieb about the idea of a single vaccine that could prevent seasonal viruses as well as prevent pandemics. Hey, Gates says there's a universal flu vaccine. Is that crazy? Gates says President Trump stated to Gottlieb. Gottlieb responded by telling the president there was some good work underway, but he'd need to look into it. Gottlieb has confirmed that he did indeed speak to President Trump and Gates regarding the matter. However, he wouldn't confirm what was said. With a number of states pushing for mandatory vaccine legislation. So that's really weird. They all started doing this push up under Donald Trump, right when Donald Trump's talking about meeting Bill Gates about a universal flu vaccine. Anyway, with a number of states pushing for mandatory vaccination legislation, the idea of a president being on board with any sort of vaccine is a precarious place. But what could be worse for those opposed to mandatory vaccine is the fact that the White House science advisor position is currently empty, which could lead to logical speculation that Gates may fill that role. John Holdren is the last to hold that title, which lasted until the end of Obama's tenure. Hey, maybe we should have a science advisor, Gates claims he told Trump. Did I want to be the science advisor? Gates replied with, Gates claims that such a rule wouldn't be a good use of his time. Gates further stated he couldn't validate the president's seriousness over the offer, which could been asked in jest. This was Gates' third total meeting with Trump, all of which taken place since 2016, all of which have included the topic of vaccines. Of course, Senator Pan, the authoritarian California legislator that introduced SB 1424 to curb online dissent over liberal policy, was ecstatic over hearing about the meeting. And goes on to say, Bill Gates, Dr. Richard Pan said, Bill Gates was talking to President Donald J. Trump in the Oval Office last month when the conversation turned to the notion of a universal flu vaccine. The idea fired up the president, who Gates described as super interested. In a matter of moments, Trump had Gottlieb, the commissioner of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, on the speakerphone, asking him about a vaccine that could generate lasting protection against a range of seasonal and animal flu viruses with pandemic potential. So that's kind of odd because, they said the coronavirus came from a bat or a pangolin. Something about that. So I'll just kind of leave this article in the show notes. I know I got it in the Odyssey show notes. I don't know if I put it in the YouTube show notes, but anyway, I just kind of wanted to run that by. I thought that was kind of interesting that this person wrote this whole article 4 years ago, so it would be about 2018. And one thing I'll finish this off with is
they have to get the shot. The vaccinations are so important. This is really going around now. They have to get their shot.
So just remember, these people were asking Donald Trump, and they asked him on April 26, 2019, because this was going into effect 2018, 2019. They were pushing legislation to make vaccines mandatory. And some Jews and a couple other groups were like pleading with Donald Trump, hey, please stop them from doing this. And Donald Trump responded by saying they have to get their shots. It's too important. And measles, everybody knows the measles is not as deadly as COVID-19 or scary. So if you got to get it for the measles, you got to get it for COVID-19 since we destroyed everybody's life. You couldn't even hold your grandmother's hand in some places as she's dying because COVID-19 is too scary. You can't go see her, can't go visit her. Can't go see your grandparents in their last days or your mother or maybe even your own child. And so if measles is going to be mandatory, you better believe the COVID-19 is going to be mandatory. And, oh, yeah, Trump said I wouldn't mandate it. But you know what? He can also say, oh, states' rights and have all the states mandate it. He never said he was going to do anything to stop it. He just said he wouldn't do it so that he could push it off on someone else and let them make all the decisions, like governors and things like that. So anyway, hey, I'm going to do another show in a few minutes. I'll start up another stream because I want to kind of go into like some stuff I found out about Ukraine and everything. And so in about maybe 10 minutes, I'll be right back on. Now, I just kind of wanted to keep these two topics separate. So anyway, thanks everyone for watching. I'll be back.